Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, NFL draft coming up. It's that time of year. Caleb Williams and Drake Maye already both having announced they will forego their bowl game, although I think Caleb Williams maybe hasn't technically said he's going to enter the draft yet. I would expect Jayden Daniels to follow suit pretty soon. I don't know why in the world he would let these guys get some sort of undue advantage in training for the combine over him just to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Wisconsin in the Dairy Raid. But those are the big three. Or first off, let's start here. Do you think it is now a big three? Because, coming in the year for much year, it was just Caleb Williams and Drake Maye in terms of NFL prospect. Has Jayden Daniels broken into that top three?
I definitely think he's going to get considered for it. What I can't figure out is how much of the I'm not sure about Caleb Williams now is really people worried that they feel like Caleb Williams is Kyler Murray 2.0, or I just want Caleb Williams, and so I'm gonna talk all this mess about him and hope he drops.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because my question with the two is, it's not like Drake Maye lit up the world this year either. Like both of them had their better seasons last year, so I'm not saying like either one's limping into the offseason, either one's limping into the draft, but I know there's a lot of people saying like, well, Caleb tried to do too much this year. Caleb tried to, put the team on his back and made some mistakes. And it's like, did you watch Drake? It's not like Drake was going out there throwing for 4 or 5 touchdowns every week either. It's like
they lost to Virginia.
So I don't believe Drake Maye caught up any kind of ground or should be picked above Caleb based on the way that either one of them performed this year.
Yeah, I think Caleb's the best quarterback. I mean, if we're just talking skill set, arm talent, intangibles, the intangibles are what everybody's worried about, but like wanting to win and being sad he didn't win, is not necessarily a bad thing to me. Now, I don't need to see you bawling, boohoo crying after regular season games, because if that's going to happen to you in college, boy, buddy, the NFL is going to be rough. Because even if you're really good, you're going to lose 5 or 6 games a year.
I think, look, who do you think scores highest on the intangible front? So I kind of feel like that would actually be Jayden Daniels. And the reason why I've been talking about lately, it's because it's not just, he's got this like, very humble, sincere sort of personality, which honestly, maybe the NFL would want him to be a bit more vocal. What you talked about in Heisman speech, you said you wanted me to do it. I got it outside my comfort zone to try to do that. But to me, when I talk about intangibles, I really want to know like work ethic, commitment to the process. And when you look at the leap that you saw Jayden Daniels make this year, like the only way that happens is if you're obsessed with getting better. And there's all and this stuff becomes a bit apocryphal. Like you never know where the line ends, but I take it pretty much at face value. But like his training regimen during this offseason was it was grindy. It was constant film session before the sun came up, learning to work through progressions, all these other sorts of things. And so, I would score Daniels, and that's why I would maybe have him taking over Maye potentially, or the intangibles combined with kind of that modern NFL meta where Lamar Jackson is showing, you can win in the NFL very consistently with a true dual threat, and Jayden Daniels an even better passer coming out of college.
Right. And that's the thing with Jayden Daniels. The people who think, it's because of his legs, the yards he gained on the ground, if you watched a lot of LSU this year, were pretty much desperation. Like, this play has blown up. I am escaping the pocket and I am running. He's still looking downfield most of the time, and he's a very good downfield passer. Like, I'd be more worried if he was a guy who completed 80% of his passes, but none of them were 5 yards past the line of scrimmage. Like, this dude is throwing deep and he looks good.
Literally, Bo Nix.
I wasn't gonna say it.
I mean, Bo Nix.
It was 78%, by the way. But so but Jayden Daniels clearly can get the ball down the field. Now, are people going to be as open for him in the NFL as Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas were? Probably not. But I think that's one of those things that, like, you just can't predict, like, how a guy's going to react to the difference between NFL open and college open, because that was the knock against Tua for his first couple of years in the NFL was, well, they're not as open as they are at Alabama, and he's kind of clutching a little bit. Well, guess what? When you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, they can get that open, and it seems like Tua has gotten over that risk aversion and said, you know what, I'm going to have to rip it in here.
Yeah, and
that, right too. Yes.
And I want to ask you this.
To McDaniel, that's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
JD kind of asked, I was about to go there next too. Like we talk, it was always the big two. We always talk about, could Drake overtake Caleb and become the number one quarterback? Like, do we need to have a discussion of Jayden being number 2 or number 1? Because best athlete goes to Jayden. He's shown us he can throw the ball vertically down the field. He's shown us he could make every single pass. Plus, he is more athletic than the other 2 guys. Like, is there a legit conversation of him being 1 or 2 in this conversation?
Oh, I think there definitely is a legit conversation based on what we saw this year. Based on, quarterbacks that we've seen in the past, I think Joe Burrow helped Jayden a lot by forging a similar path a couple of years earlier, where people are going to look at what Joe Burrow did between year 1 at LSU and year 2 at LSU and how similar what Jayden Daniels did was, and go, you know what? We might be dealing with the same kind of person here, and that bodes very well. Plus, what you saw on the field from Jayden Daniels is fairly undeniable. So I agree. Let's throw them all in a bucket and let the NFL kind of sort it out 1, 2, 3. We don't have to assume Caleb's number 1 anymore. I think Jayden has earned the right to be in the conversation.
Who in your mind would if someone was going to overtake Caleb? I lean more to Jayden.
It'd be Jayden. It wouldn't be Drake. Yeah, it would be Jayden. And I think this is going to be one of those. We're going to hear every bit of dirty laundry about Caleb and Drake and Jayden if he gets into that. Into that echelon, because there's so many quarterback desperate teams, so many teams feel like they got to get one of these guys.
Yeah, and look, Dobby's in the chat says beginning of the season, best QB class in a long time. End of the season, they're all right. Well, no, nobody's saying they're all right, but this is where it's still an incredible quarterback class because 3 guys we're talking about.
I wasn't thinking about anybody beyond Caleb and Drake when the season started. I didn't know who was going to be up there with them. I'm pleasantly surprised that we're talking about Jayden Daniels now.
But I think it's a part to do with Jayden playing out of his mind, but also those 2, once again, like I said at the beginning, like those 2 were not underwhelming, but they did not hit the bar that they kind of set from a year ago. Yeah. Like those guys were superstars. Like I was kind of viewing Caleb as one of the best quarterbacks I've seen over the past 2 decades. And I still think that he is the talent to be that, but obviously didn't show that for the majority of the year.
Can I ask you guys a question about Caleb that requires a little examination into USC post Caleb? How much talent was really around Caleb Williams this year?
Not as much.
We kind of talked about it yesterday. That's going to be the almost paradoxical knock against Jayden is you're going to say, oh, well, he maybe had the best O-line in the country. He maybe had the best 2 receivers in the country. So I'm with you there, Andy. Like both had to overcome awful defenses, but obviously Jayden with significantly more help in doing so.
Jayden has 2 NFL tackles. Yeah. And then the interior guys are probably playing in the NFL too.
Yeah.
2 NFL, like wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2 in the NFL. Those 2 guys will be. And Caleb didn't. Zachariah Branch is going to be amazing, but he's a true freshman and he didn't get a chance to do that much this year. He didn't have Jordan Addison this year and it showed.
All right, look, well, and then to get back at what Dobby was talking about there, so no, I mean, exactly right. So that's why probably though, even though Caleb Williams had a down year, he still remains number 1 pick in a lot of people's minds because that raw physical talent is still there. That sort of Pat Mahomes style. I do love that you have 3 guys that are being bandied about that all have different exciting comps. Not to say they're going to be their players, but Williams in the Mahomes mold. Drake Maye is your Aaron Rodgers, and then Jayden Daniels is kind of your Lamar Jackson, right? I'm going to be fascinated to see who emerges out of there. Last one on the quarterbacks before we move on. To Dobby's point, all I'm saying is yes, make no mistake, the quarterback class is still great for this year's NFL draft. I mean, even beyond these guys, you're going to have exciting kind of take a shot guys like Penix. You got Bo Nix. Now, maybe because there's no longer like a Quinn Ewers here and, Carson Beck looks like he'll probably return to Georgia. Maybe there's, some of that is pushed to next year, but I still think it's going to be 2 good years of quarterbacks for the NFL. Do y'all agree?
Well, yeah, I think next year could be even better than this year, but I want to ask Andy this question. So say Penix goes out there and wins at least versus Texas and has a good game, national championship, and hell, Washington wins the national championship. Like, do we need to think about him in that conversation? Of
his medicals are going to be rough, and that's the thing that people don't think about, because we're just looking at pure performance in college, but NFL teams are looking at that because of the investment. Like, it's not just picking the guy in the first round. It is, if you think you're getting your franchise quarterback, you're talking about what you're hoping is a 10 to 12 year decision. And they're going to look at his medicals and be like, 10 to 12 years feels like an awfully long time with this guy who had 3 season-ending injuries in college. So that's the part, and it's not Michael Penix's fault. There's nothing you can do about that. But NFL teams are going to take that pretty seriously.